2021 ended with a double-digit inflation rate as December inflation hit 12.6%. Now, this is a 0.4% higher than what was recorded in November last year. According to the Ghana Statistical Service, the surge in inflation was driven by an increase in non-food items. Also, prices of goods and services went up by 1.2% between November and December 2021. We're joined via Zoom by Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Fiscal Studies, Dr. Said Boache. But first, let's listen to the government statistician in this particular report. Inflation ended the year 2021 with a double-digit rate of 12.6%, a slight increase from the November 2021 rate of inflation and the highest since April 2017. This indicates that the central bank's target of 8% plus or minus 2% has been missed. According to the government statistician, Professor Samuel Kopena-Ening, the surge in inflation was driven by the increase in non-food inflation rates, which are housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels.
Overall inflation stood at 12.6%. This literally means that prices of goods and services have gone up by 12.6% between December 2020 and December 2021. This is the sixth consecutive month in a row that prices of goods and services have gone up, indicating a 4.8 percentage difference between the rate recorded in June 2021, which was 7.8%, relative to December 2021, 12.6%. On a month-on-month basis between November 2021 and December 2021, prices of goods and services went up by 1.2%. The gap between food and non-food inflation has been narrowed for the month of December 2021 to a gap of 0.3 percentage point, as food inflation stood at 12.8 relative to 12.5 for non-food inflation.
The high rate of certain food commodities in the Upper West region pushed its rate to 18.1%, making it the highest among the 10 regions.
It should be emphasized that from a weight perspective, in the Upper West region, food and non-alcoholic beverages has the highest weight of 0.7%. Narrowing down on food inflation for the Upper West region, we saw vegetables within the food category recording the highest inflation rate of 47.1%, culminating in a food inflation of 31.1%.
Meanwhile, the Ghana Statistical Service has conducted data collection for the newly created regions and will be releasing the rate of inflation in the coming months. Now, Dr. Said Boache is a Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Fiscal Studies, and he joins us via Zoom on this development. We're grateful that he could join us. Government indeed has missed its single-digit inflation target for 2021. How do you assess this?
Yeah, there have been a number of pressures, and I'm not surprised that the government has missed the target. The reason is that there have been enormous fiscal pressures currently. And at the start of 2021, you realize that rainfall, that is the biggest factor that influences the food component of inflation, was not so good. And it is also translating into food inflation. So these pressures are actually moving upwards the inflation rate. So I'm not surprised at all.
But how do we tame the rise in inflation? And of course, what are the threats actually to Ghana's economy if the rate continues to surge?
Inflation affects the economy in various forms. One is business planning and business investment. If inflation keeps on increasing, prices are unstable, businesses find it difficult to plan ahead. And for that matter, at times it affects the amount of investments they make. So high inflation is not good for the business environment. And at the same time, for fixed income earners, they realize that their cost of living has gone up, their real income has gone down, and for that matter, their demand for goods and services also goes down. Okay. And it translates to affect the economy. So that is the impact inflation can have on the economy.
Indeed. Let's now talk solutions, because at the Institute of Fiscal Studies, I believe you've done some research into how best we could avert the upward trend of inflation in the country. Help us with some details, some explanation as to what government must do in the medium to long term to avert this situation.
to solve every problem, you have to understand what is causing that problem. In fact, when we were showing what the Ghana statisticians, government statisticians said, he was blaming it largely on the non-food component. But the food component is also a problem. We realized that in August, since somewhere August 2021, the food component has also been in second double digit. So it is not only being pushed by the non-food inflation.
Okay.
This time around, the inflation is coming from the two major sources, both food and non-food. We know that the biggest factor that affects food inflation is rainfall.
Okay.
Rainfall cannot be solved in a short term. You need a long-term plan, of course. There's always a talk about irrigation, to improve upon irrigation. And in the short term, it's very difficult to do. But there are also other factors, particularly government policy towards agriculture in terms of fertilizer supply, seed supply, and others. If there are bottlenecks, it can also add to the the rainfall problem to cause inflation. I just said that at the start of 2021, we had issues with rainfall pattern. It was not so good, and it is affecting it. There have been complaints from farmers about bottlenecks in fertilizer supply, seed supply. And so on that note, on food component in the short term, the government can help by improving efficiency in supply of fertilizer and seed, and solve any possible corruption going on in that area. And when you come to the non-food component of inflation, there are many sources. One is exchange rate, and you realize that getting to Christmas, exchange rate began to be quite unstable. Depreciation of the cedi picked up, and it is translating into inflation. But why were we having this exchange rate difficulty? Of course, the Christmas, business activities are part of it.
Yeah.
But you can see that it is not every year that such a thing happens. The government finances are really a problem, in the sense that there's so much debt burden hanging on the country, and a big component of this is owed to foreigners, and you need to service it. When you want to service it, you need foreign exchange. So demand for foreign currency will go up, and it will exert pressures on depreciation of the cedi, will translate into inflation. So these are the factors that are translating into inflation. So if the government wants to get a handle on inflation, it has to solve the problem in the agricultural sector through effective policy, and it has to solve the fiscal problem. Do as much as the government can to help solve the fiscal problem.
But even as they're, moving up to solve the fiscal problems, I believe there are also some geopolitical events happening around this that they might not have a hand over. Development regarding the Omicron variant, matters regarding the US dollar, and even China's, invasion here and there. How best can government balance all these risks to ensure that inflation shortfalls are much more in a very much measurable way?
Of course, the Ghanaian economy, like all other economies, are linked to the world economy, the global economy. And negative things happening over there could easily be imported into Ghana. And there's also Omicron. But the effect of Omicron inflation, you can say that it hasn't been that strong. Of course, it has impacted GDP growth. But if you look at the trend, you can see that, for instance, for the non-food component, inflation has largely been in single digit, since August 2019, with the exception of this November, December 2020. It has largely been in single digit. And for that matter, the present pressures that we are experiencing on non-food component, we cannot completely attribute it to COVID. Even the COVID is in the background causing the problem.
Dr. Said Wache, we're grateful that you could join us with the analysis. He's a senior research fellow at the Institute of Fiscal Studies there, breaking it down for us when it comes to what government must do in the medium to long term regarding the upward, situation regarding the inflation rate.